Well, it's about that time. The Rutledge Perfected Radio Show coming your way this morning at 10 a.m. Central from the historic KCOH TV radio station, The Boost, at the corner of Alameda and Wichita in Houston, Texas. Come join me because we're going to chat about leadership and showing up
Good
and getting
morning.
aligned and getting clear and taking action and voting and voting and voting and all of that stuff. So join me for some great conversation and a few laughs. And when we're done, be sure and head over to your favorite podcast platform or to my website, laurelrutledge.com, and subscribe to my weekly podcast, The Rutledge Reflective Podcast. Episodes drop every Wednesday, and they are short and sweet, commute worthy. And I promise you, you'll get something out of every one that will help you shift your perspective. Because when you shift your perspective, you shift your circumstances. See you soon.
Good morning. It's Tuesday morning. Y'all, we are in December. We are in December of 2022. It is Tuesday morning. I missed y'all last week when I couldn't be here. I missed y'all. Missed being on the radio show. I missed Jerry P. Beasley. Can you believe it? So I am so glad to be back here today. Voting today is so important that I got 2 vote pins on today because y'all know Georgia, I need y'all to do it. And let's just claim the victories. I am so excited that so many people showed up for early voting in this runoff election. I mean, people are showing up. And there is I think it's called Lime. There's an organization called Lime in Georgia that's giving 2 free 30-minute rides to the polls. It's Lime. If you go to whenweallvote.org, there's information there. So it's called Lime, Lime, like the fruit, lime. And they are giving free rides to the polls today. So 30 minutes each way. So if you are having trouble or need transportation to the polls, do that. So yeah, it's and so far they've also said, so I'm going to take the positive in this because what it makes me do is want to just yell at people. The last report I heard was there was over 70,000 people who have voted in this runoff election who didn't vote in the original election. So first of all, yay! Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for voting. 2, don't do that next time. Show up the first time. Okay, come on, y'all. Come on. Let's show up. Every time we have an opportunity to vote, let's show up. All right, so Georgia, we are watching you. Since we're talking about Georgia, let me do this real fast. There are some other runoff elections going on, according to Ballotpedia. They are local runoff elections. So Trenton, New Jersey, Grant County, Oregon. Austin has some, Corpus, El Paso, Corpus, those are all on the 13th. And then El Paso and Laredo, those are on the 17th, some runoff elections. And then on the 14th, Fiji has their general election. And on the 17th, Tunisia has their legislative election. Because again, what happens to one of us happens to all of us. So people still voting, y'all. There's still things going on in the world that are important that we need to pay attention to. So thank you for everyone who did get registered, showed up, took somebody with you, took somebody to get registered, made sure you were paying attention to the ballot, got educated, all of those things. Thank you. But we got another, we're going to do this, and then we've got another stuff coming up, and it doesn't end. It is so important to keep going. And then of course we got 2024 that everybody's going to be preparing for, but we've got some things coming up in 2023. So just stay vigilant, stay registered, make sure you're checking your registration, all that good stuff. Make sure you're ready. All right. So also for the show, we're going to have a few things moving as well here as we go into the holidays. So I will be here the week of Christmas. I'll be here with Jerry. So that will happen. But next week, we may need to reschedule some things. So stay tuned, watch my website, all that kind of stuff. Watch my IG, Facebook, LinkedIn for the dates for next week, because we do have some things that are going to change because of schedules. And, next year, Jerry and I've been talking about this a while. Next year, going to look at doing some things on location, doing some pop-ups in places for the radio show. So we're going to be talking about that, and hopefully be able to get you some behind the scenes too of the radio show early in February. So, or late January, early February. So we're going to be working on some really cool things starting next year. All right. So with that, today, today, I want to talk about, I was thinking about, who are you listening to? Who are you really thinking about? And maybe I'll start with this little story first, and then we're going to dive into what we're talking about today, which is moving past the damage, right? Allowing the damage to grow out so that you can keep moving and be stronger afterwards. But when I was first thinking about the show, I was like, who are you listening to, and what are you asking for? So, I talked to you guys about this business accelerator that I'm in, Rachel Rogers Accelerator. And then there was an opportunity to join her club, and I was like, oh, am I going to make this investment? And I did it, but and I did it even with a little bit of trepidation, not necessarily because of the money, because I think it's important to invest in yourself when you're doing anything, whether you're building a business or building a career. It's important to invest in your own learning and growth. But when I look at a lot of the people that were like commenting and all of that kind of stuff, there just weren't people that are kind of in my lane, because I am shifting some. And I say shifting, it really is a return as opposed to a shift. It's a return to what I said in the very, very beginning that I was going to be doing, which is working very closely with smaller, growing women-owned businesses, and then executives, especially newly minted senior executives, because that leap into the senior executive ranks, either the C-suite or the direct reports to C-suite. That's a big leap. And there's a big change in that. So working with those people directly, kind of moving that, as opposed to a lot of the heavy, one-on-one online coaching, all of that space, which there's some amazing people that do a lot of that. And I will be doing some of that on a case-by-case basis, because I do enjoy helping people in that realm, but really using my genius in that lane where it's supposed to be, in that niche where it's really supposed to be, where the impact is greater, and focused on the deeper why, which is impacting education, because I'm able to do what I do because my parents invested very heavily in our education, and not only formal education, but also ensuring that we read and that we were exposed to things and that we understood that there were different perspectives. I mean, they just invested a lot in ensuring we were critical thinkers. And so that's one of the reasons I'm able to do what I do. And so ultimately, the ultimate why is that impact on education. So anyway, as I was thinking through all of that, I was like, who do we listen to? Who are we listening to? And as I was thinking about this thing, there's an opportunity to go to this retreat in Puerto Rico in January. And I just this morning, I decided I was going to go. Yesterday, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I've got another event here. And I don't know. And then this morning, and I just prayed about it, right? And then this morning, there was a post from someone who was a B2B person. And it was like, here's what you do. And this is what I'm doing. And this is my thought process and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, see, God wink. Because I was about to say, no, never mind. And potentially miss an opportunity to connect with folks who are in the same space. Because I didn't see people who are in the same space. If you can see it, you can be it, right? And not only seeing it because I don't believe I can be it, but seeing it in that it's important, if you're going to be spending resources, that there's some kind of return on that. And that return, for me, at least at this point, is really good, beginning to connect with more and more people in that B2B space, but not at a big, product piece, but at a service piece. So, so that whole idea of, well, who are you listening to? Who are you really listening to? And are you paying attention to the things that are important to give you the messages that you need? So I started thinking about that. And then I went back to, but it's deeper than that, which gets to our topic for today, which is going past the damage. It's deeper than just who you're listening to. And so y'all know I always use metaphors, right? So some of it's gardening stuff, but this time it's really about preparation as we go into 2023. And for me, I was looking at my fingernails the other day. So my fingernails are back to being like really, really short. And they were looking so nice, and they were long, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, what is going on? What is happening? Because years ago, I used to really pick at my nails a lot and chew my nails and all that. And I could tell when my anxiety was really high because my nails were a mess. And then I realized what had happened. Going through so many years of covering them up, right? You put on false nails, whether it's the acrylic or whatever, all the gel stuff, whatever's going on now, right? And you put on all that stuff, and it looks really nice on the surface. But when you wear that stuff too long, when you wear anything too long and you don't allow yourself to breathe, whether it's putting on a mask, putting on whatever it is, even hair, right? When you're adding hair or you're having your hair in a protective style, sometimes those protective styles themselves can be damaging. You need to be allowed to breathe. Your hair needs to breathe. Your nails need to breathe. And what hit me was, what's happening is this isn't a function of my anxiety showing up like it normally is. This is a function of the damage finally growing out. All of that damage that was sitting really close to the cuticle, right? Really center of the nail bed that I knew was there, but just didn't think about it because as the nails grow out, right, there's the damage is kind of in the middle. It's not on the tip, it's in the middle. But as it gets closer to the edge, as it gets closer to the surface, it begins to have a bigger impact. There's weakness that's there, right? There's chipping that happens. There's, my nails tend to chip in layers. And there's weakness that happens as it tends to grow out to be part of that free edge, right? Stick with me now, as it tends to be part of that free edge. And so you have a choice. Sometimes you can shore up the damage, right? You can reinforce it. You can put like the strengthener nail polish, or you can put, like I found a hack where you take like tea bags, right? And you take a little piece of the tea bag and some nail glue, and you put that over because it gets invisible, and it just strengthens that crack in your nail or that piece of damage so that you can keep moving. You just paint over it and keep going, right? So you can, when you have damage, you can cover it up. You can reinforce it so that it doesn't wreak havoc on the whole rest of your environment, right? So that you can have it strong enough to even grow further out so you can clip it off when it doesn't have as big an impact. Or you just do the big chop. We hear that all the time, at least in the Black community. Black hair is a thing, y'all. And you hear people talking about the big chop as they're going natural, as they're growing out a relaxer. I'm just going to chop it all off. And it's a big deal to decide whether or not you're going to do the big chop. Because basically, if you've had your hair relaxed and your hair is down to your shoulders and you're trying to grow it out, and growing it out is a process. And then all of a sudden you're cutting your hair off to 1 or 2 inches in length all over to just get rid of all the relaxed stuff and just start all over. The big chop is a big deal. And sometimes cutting off the damaged pieces, cutting off the damaged relationships, the damaged activities or behaviors, cutting that off, just full bore, clean cut, provides for the opportunity for exponential, speedy growth, right? When you talk about plants and they look at, hey, you go and prune your plants. You prune off all the damaged part. You cut things back. I know when my mom cuts her roses back, they cut almost to the ground. And when you do that, when they come back, it's like they're big and they're full and they're beautiful because you've cut off all the dead stuff. You cut off all the damage. It looks crazy and it looks pitiful right after you chop all the stuff off. And you might even feel pitiful. You feel like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've completely ruined it. I've damaged it. I've hurt it so bad it can't possibly recover. But if you give it time and you continue to nurture it, right, from that new perspective of the damage being gone and only new growth and strong roots being there, that next period of growth comes back stronger and better and more aligned, right? You don't have those cracks, those weaknesses, those peeling back layers, because you've taken the opportunity to just chop that off, to just start all over from scratch, to start from where it's healthy in order to move forward. And so many times, I know I use that metaphor a lot. And for me, it's easy to use metaphors because it makes sense. I just had a conversation with somebody the other day and I'm like, look, when you talk about this particular issue in a contract, like it's just like when you get a bike, the manufacturer of the bike is responsible for building something that has structural integrity for the use it is intended for. They're responsible for that. If there is something wrong in the integrity of their manufacturing process, they are responsible for that. They are liable for any damage that is caused or harm that is caused for any action that they took that did not uphold the integrity of the thing for its proper use. However, if that bike is then used in a way that is not meant for it to be used, and someone gets hurt or the bike gets damaged, the manufacturer is not responsible for your damage or your pain because you decided to use something for not its intended purposes. And when we talk about contracts, right, and making sure that everyone in the contract is protected, a lot of that is about, you just want to make sure that everybody is using things for the use or for the reason they were intended, right? And that neither party is responsible for the negligence of the other or for the inability of the other to do the right thing, right? Or to use it in an appropriate way. It's the same thing when you're talking about cutting off damaged pieces, getting rid of those things, those people, those relationships, those processes that are not working. I see this a lot in organizations as they grow. What got you here won't get you there. Holding on to those old structures, those old processes when you're trying to move is doing nothing but continuing to damage the organization. It's holding you back. You're not going to be able to move forward or move into that thing you want if you're holding on to those old structures and those old processes, because they're not shoring up your relationships, right? They're not shoring up your business. They are not moving and growing with your organization and with the processes or the structures and strategies that you say you want to achieve. That damage has to be eliminated, right? That constraint has to be pulled apart so that you can grow. Even if you think about like butterflies or things like that come in cocoons, or reptiles, right? They shed their skin every once in a while. Every season they shed their skin. And what you hear people talk about is, if that skin stayed on, it sheds because the animal is growing. That skin staying on is a constraint for their growth. They would not be able to continue to grow if that old skin stayed on. It is restricting their movement. It's restricting their growth. It's restricting their ability to keep moving, right? And sometimes that's what happens. And we're so afraid to get rid of the damage because of the way it looks when we cut everything off, the way it looks when we've redone processes, the pain of untying something to retie something else. We want to avoid that discomfort. And so instead of just sucking it up for a little bit to get rid of the thing that is not serving us anymore, we continue to dig ourselves into that hole of a lack of progress because we're holding on to something because it's what we know. That's what they say. It's the enemy you know. You stick with something sometimes because it's the enemy you know, even though you know it's not good for you. It's the enemy you know. And you've heard Jerry and I talk a lot on the show about moving forward. And if you listen to the podcast, you've heard me talk about this a lot. How do you move forward into spaces that are uncomfortable or that you don't know anything about or that require you to shed things and or people in order to get there? And that ties back into, who are you listening to? Are you listening to your heart, your real purpose? That God wink that's coming to you, that divine download that's coming to you about where you should be and what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. Are you listening to that? Or are you listening to all the naysayers that say, this is how you should do it? Or all the multi-million people who are in the same space as you who are like, this is how you do this. And even though it doesn't feel right for you, you try to do that thing and you're wondering why it doesn't work because it's not necessarily the right thing for you, right? How are you ensuring that you're cutting off all the things that don't serve you so that you can move into the things that do and can give back and push forward into the things that are not only fulfilling your purpose, but making an impact? You know, I interviewed my friend Cheryl on Fireside last week, and she is a former executive as well in corporate. She was at really big firms like Pratt and Whitney, like Lockheed, like really, really big firms. And in one of her last roles, actually got a breast cancer diagnosis just as she was literally about to leave to go live in Singapore, right? Now she is not only a survivor, but a thriver. And so she got through that. She and her husband moved back to Houston, and she decided, I've always had in my mind this media thing. Now she's also a musician. She plays saxophone. She's a jazz musician. Always had in my mind this media thing. Always really wanted to be an actor. Always really, all of these things that she wanted to do. And so when I first met her through a mutual friend, she was working on her proposal for like a talk show. And so we talked about that, and we stay connected, and she's part of my sister circle. And when I talked to her on the show last week, she said something in such a way that was so powerful for me because it was visual. I could see the visual. She said, Laurel, I remember when we had that conversation, and I was like, I'm trying to do this thing. It's not really working. Maybe I just need to go get a job. I got this call from Amazon. I could just go work at Amazon. And I was like, don't do that. Now, if you really want to go back and work, we can find you something, but don't do that. And that's not a slam on Amazon, y'all. And she said, in that conversation, I had to start thinking, what do I want the dash to mean? What do I want in that dash? And I was like, wow. And what she was talking about is, if you think about a headstone, right? A memorial when someone passes away, there's the year they're born, there's a dash, and then there's the year they passed away. Now, I've heard people say many years, right? What do you want your epitaph to say? You don't want it to say you just worked really hard. What do you really want it to say, right? But I'd never heard anyone put it like, how am I going to fill the dash? How am I going to fill the dash? Y'all, that is powerful. That is powerful because that one little dash speaks to your entire existence on this earth. That little dash, that one little symbol represents everything that you did while you were present here. And so what she's doing now is she is now in this next piece of her career, right? As a more mature individual, she is a working actor in LA. She was just in a movie over the weekend, and Cheryl, forgive me because I did not post about this. She was just in a Hallmark movie over the weekend. She had a part in a Hallmark movie. She is going to be filming in a couple of weeks in Oakland for another film with some directors that we all know. I mean, she's doing tons of print work. She was just in a great, and you can see it in Sephora. She was just in a great campaign with House Labs with Lady Gaga. So she got to actually do a layout and a promotion with Lady Gaga, who she says is just the most genuine and caring person she's met. This about cutting off the damage, about moving away from what everyone else tells you're supposed to do, about letting relationships and conversations go that don't serve you, letting the damage grow out or cutting it off so that you can thrive. And look at what she's doing. Look at what her dash is going to say. I mean, I don't know, Jerry, that was so powerful for me. What are you filling the dash with? I never heard it put that way. Never. And it's such a powerful statement because we need to think about not just the beginning or the ending, but what are we doing in the middle? This morning we all woke up to Kirstie Alley having passed away and they said a private battle with cancer. And the little that I've heard said it was a pretty recent diagnosis. So it moved pretty quickly. And they're not revealing too much. And I don't blame them because we've gotten into this world where everybody thinks they have a right to know all of your business. It was a private battle for a reason. She wanted it that way. So if they choose to share, then they choose to share. But if not, then we need to leave them alone and just pray for their comfort, in this time. But her dash, think about what she filled her dash with. The things that she did, the impact that she made, the lives that she touched, coming through in all of these tributes. What is it that you're willing to do? And what are you wanting to do? And are you willing to eliminate the damage? Are you willing to move past the things that are holding you back that someone else told you were supposed to be doing. Or worse yet, someone else told you you can't possibly. How dare you think you? What makes you think you can? All of that madness, which is about them and not about you. Now, your true friends in your village may be saying, are you sure? I got you, but are you sure that's what you want to do? Right? They may be doing that, or they may come and tell you, you know what, girl, that's not what you said. So help me understand this is really going, because here's what I know about you, and this doesn't seem to align. So let's talk about that. Right? There are good friends who will put you on pause to make sure you're not doing something to ultimately damage yourself. But who are you listening to? And what are you willing to let go in order to get what you want? And this is a perfect time of year to really be thinking about that, because it's December. It's December the 6th. It's election day. It's December the 6th. We are about done with 2022, heading into 2023. Now it's not over. There is time. There's still time to get really great things done. And what are those things anchoring you that are keeping you from moving? Is it fear? Is it fatigue? Is it mindset? If there's something that's holding you back, how do you take the time to identify that, understand what it is, understand how it's impacting you, and then make a conscious decision to do something about it? Or not. There's no judgment here. But if you choose not to, then you can't be mad at anybody. And you can't blame anybody else. Because you're making a choice not to do anything about it.
Let me ask a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You said your friend was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right? When she was getting ready to move somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that had an impact on her saying, you know what, I'm going to fill in the dash after she got such a diagnosis and beat it prayerfully, right?
Right. Yes, she did. You know, it's interesting. It was probably 50-50 for her as we had the conversation. It was definitely a kick in the butt to go ahead and do it. But she continued to be a musician, right? She took every opportunity she could to play. So she did never let that go. She took an opportunity to meet people every time she had a chance to start building kind of this other media presence. So it was more like a hobby kind of thing that never went away, that she always wanted to do. I would say the diagnosis kicked her into high gear for it to be the thing as opposed to a side thing. For her to take the leap to say, you know what, you only get one dash. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I don't want to go out of here without at least trying. So she was one of those where it was an impetus to take it to the next level as opposed to just starting, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody's kind of in a different place. There are a lot of people who do have a side hustle that they love, right? It's really what they want, but for some reason, they're not making it their full-time gig. And some people just want to keep a side hustle, and I'm mad at you, right? They want to keep that extra thing because it's like my brother loves to cook, and he's always said, you know, I don't know that I want a restaurant because then it becomes a business. Mm-hmm. And I love cooking right now, and I'm not sure I'd love it if I have to deal with all that stuff and hiring people, and are they going to have the same quality and same work? He said, you know, then it becomes a job, and I love it too much to let it become a job. So there are folks like that, right, whose side hustle is truly their passion project, and that's the space they want to keep it in. But then there are others who that side hustle is really their tipping the toe in to the thing that they really want. And then it's a matter of turning the switch on, just saying, are we going to go for it or are we not? Again, no judgment. Only you can decide what makes sense for you. But I encourage you to take the time to decide and to understand which it is. Right? Is it fear? Is it what is the awareness work you can do so that your dash is full? So that your dash is what you want it to be. So your dash has impact. Or that your dash is made up of the things that make sense for you and for your family and for the folks you love. Because some folks' dash is, no, I'm going to be this corporate executive because it affords me and my family some things that are really important to us. And I really like being able to impact cultures of organizations. I like being able to use my platform to do other things. There are a lot of people doing crazy, amazing things in corporate America. So I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm just bashing corporate America, because there's some really great things about corporate America. It was time for me to get out. It was time for me to get out. And everything that I learned gave me this opportunity to really assist those in navigating that space who want to stay there. That is my genius, because I did it. It's my genius to be able to navigate your life and career for whatever it is you want. And so there are folks who are making incredible impacts in their dash in that corporate space. There are incredible entrepreneurs who are doing that, nonprofit leaders who are doing that, folks who just have their side hustle who's making that, right? It's about whatever that dash is supposed to be. How are you making it the most? And it's not just that little slash on a piece of granite at the end of the day. Because we have time. We don't know how much time we have. We never do. But every day that you open your eyes on this side of the daisies is another opportunity.
It's not like bonanza. So
Don't sleep on Bonanza, y'all. I loved Bonanza. But that's not where I got that from. Haas was awesome.
yeah, you.
Yes. And Pernell Roberts,
Yeah.
who ended up ultimately playing Trapper John MD. Remember that show?
Mm-hmm.
God, I love that show. I'm so dating myself, but yeah. So it is really critically important that we are okay with allowing damage to fall off. Sometimes we get so comfortable in the pain. That's what they talk about with Stockholm syndrome and people that are in, abusive relationships, be that personal relationships or abusive professional relationships. That's called toxic work environment, right? That's sometimes why it's so hard to leave, because it's the enemy. You know what to expect. You know what the pain is going to be. You know what's coming. And if you leave that, you don't know what to expect anymore. So while it may be painful, while the damage may be done, it's damage that you know. And sometimes we get really comfortable in our discomfort. And it is uncomfortable to step into the unknown. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to just bet on ourselves. Because if we've never done that before, we don't know. And the unknown is uncomfortable. Just because it is unknown. Right? And so I encourage you, as we go into this year and as you prep for 2023, are there places where you can just step into the unknown? And one way to do that and help yourself is to just figure out what's the absolute worst that could happen. What's the worst that could happen? And once you do that, how do you overcome that? Right? When I started to do this business, I wish I had done this in the very beginning, but when I decided to leave corporate, I did think a little bit about the worst that could happen, but I did that deeper thinking a lot later. And I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? My worst that could happen is I may have to move home, right? Sell everything and move home. And that would be embarrassing because I have to move home, but that's not bad. I'm not going to be homeless and I'm not going to be hungry. So my worst case scenario ain't that bad. Or I could just go get another job, right? It's not that bad. So sometimes the leap we need to take can start with determining what our worst case scenario is, how we would handle that. And when we know that, then we can move forward because we have a plan to address that if it should occur. Because most of the time, our worst case scenario doesn't happen. That's our mind playing games on us. That's the devil showing up to keep you from your genius, to keep you from that thing you're supposed to do, to keep you from making the impact you're supposed to be making. We have to be willing to let the damage go. We have to be willing to let the damage go, right? We have to be willing to keep moving forward. And we have to be willing to hold the line on some boundaries and hold the line on some standards for what we want to do. I had a few more reach outs I've had many reach outs over the last several months for people who wanted to be on the podcast or on the show. I'm like, no, thank you so much for reaching out. Let me do some referrals, but it's not the right fit for what I do. And there would have been a time when I'd have been like, oh, absolutely, absolutely, just come on. And I'm like, no, right? Because I've done the work on what things are important to convey for the audience, for all of you. I think about that a lot. I think about where the impact is I want to make and who I want to reach. And some stories are just not the right stories. They're just not the right things. That doesn't mean they're not valuable. They're absolutely valuable. Everyone's story is valuable. My platform is just not the right one. They're not the right fit for that particular story. And so I always make a referral wherever I can. Because again, it's not about me. I can still be in service when you're not on my show. Because if I can help you get your message out, you're going to remember that. Maybe, maybe not. But I know in my gut that I've done the right thing. Right? I have stayed in integrity with the messages I'm trying to deliver, but I'm also enabling other people to do the same, because to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I was given opportunities. I want to do the same for other people. And I responded to one this morning that had been sitting in my inbox apparently for a while, and I just didn't see it. So I responded to them this morning, and hopefully we'll get a chance to connect, because that one seems like it might make some sense. Maybe. We'll see once we have a conversation. But you have to be willing to let things go or say no to things in order to get to where you want to be, right? We're going to do some shout outs here in a minute.
You have to have a passion behind it too.
Yeah.
I can't advertise for something I don't believe in.
Exactly.
And I can't interview or have guests on that I don't believe in. Not saying that it's not a worthy cause.
Right.
But if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. So when you were speaking, I was thinking, people would think that's arrogant, but it's not. That's alignment, as you always talk
Absolutely.
about. It has to be the right fit.
It has to be alignment. And you talk all the time, Jerry, about, shows and things. We've said that on the show a lot. People who just decide, oh, I know you, so you just need to put me on the air. One, it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. And that's not about me and mean or arrogant.
Yeah.
As you said, it's about alignment. It's about quality. It's about connection. It's about brand. Let's just be honest. It's about brand. All of those things come into play, y'all.
And it's relationship, because you've grown to know your audience.
Yeah.
And you're looking out for your audience too. Would this be something that my audience would be interested in?
Absolutely.
Going forward. So that's important.
Absolutely.
When you say come back and, maybe, because I put a word out there the other day about revamp. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just needs to be revamped. I was thinking about you were on your gone taking care of business deal, but you text me, I go to bed early.
Right.
Right. So anyway, 4 in the afternoon. Right. So anyway, when you text me, I text you back the next day, but you said, yoo-hoo! I got this thing for next year and blah, blah, blah. Like, girl. But at the end of the day.
Like, did you have to tell me that now? Right?
But that means you're thinking. And that's oftentimes when you're passionate about something. Right. You begin to think and put things in place when you really have a passion for it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm really thinking about and trying to and struggling with, just from a time perspective, not from a desire perspective, is there are some people that are on my list. And so getting those reach outs out to say, hey, I really want, when you're in town, I really want you to be in studio, because there's a message that is important there that I think people, one, need to hear, but two, will find some value in. Right. I think those things are important in trying to find that. And so when I tell you guys, and I say in the podcast, and I say on Fireside, and I say here on the radio show, if there are things that you think are important that you'd like me to talk about, or people you think I should interview, send me a DM and let me know. I can't guarantee I can make it happen. But if you think it's aligned, let me know. And then let me think about that and talk about it. And if it makes sense and I can make it happen, and if it's in my power, I will absolutely do that. Right. Because I want it to be something that makes some sense for you guys. So feel free to DM me on any of my platforms, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever you find me, and say, hey, Laurel, have you thought about this? Or what about this person have you interviewed? I'm really looking at, and I can't wait, because this is going to be a great conversation. There's a linguist that I did find that I'm trying to bring on to really talk about how we talk and what that means in terms of how we show up, not only culturally, but from a power perspective. And so he's one of my reach outs. And that's going to be a great conversation. So hopefully he'll be in Houston sometime soon, or know somebody who's here local, because I'd really like to get someone local in the studio to do that as well. So anyway, let's do some shout outs.
I was looking at Ergara.
Yeah.
That's in Brazil.
Yay.
Look that up.
Okay.
And then we've got Lagos.
Oh, yay.
We've got Brazil. We've got Germany. We've got Panama. We got Angola.
Oh,
I think
Angola.
that's the first time.
Yes.
Canada. We have France. We have Germany, Finland, United Kingdom, Panama City, Helsinki, London, Frankfurt.
Love it.
We have Port Arthur. Woohoo!
Yay, Port Arthur.
New York, Chicago, San Diego, Omaha, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth, Kansas City, and Houston, Texas.
I love it. Omaha's been showing up. Thank you, Omaha. I wonder who's in Omaha. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I know we had Vietnam coming. We had Cambodia coming also last week. I mean, there's just, y'all, I can't wait for 2023. I'm trying to figure out, where I'm going to go and how I'm going to make that happen, because I do want to do some pop-ups internationally next year. Maybe I need to start domestic. That's me, just go all out. Just go pop up somewhere. But really want to do that because it's a lot of fun. Which reminds me, Afros and Audio is coming up next year. I got to go ahead and get on that. I will get on that because it's an excellent conference. So make sure you're doing that. So thank you guys for continuously showing up, for continuously being here and being a part of my journey. All right, being a part of this, and especially those of y'all who saw that first show. I went back because I was looking at some stuff for Jerry. And I went back and looked at the first show and one way to humble yourself and to realize how far you've come is to go back to the beginning. When I go back and look at my first podcast, when I go back and look at my first radio shows, I'm like, woo! Thank y'all for sticking with me is all I can say. Thank you for being there. Thank you for saying, we're going to give her a few more chances to make sure she gets her act together. So thank you for doing that, for sticking around. And thank you for showing up, because I enjoy showing up. And as long as y'all keep showing up, I'll keep showing up, because it makes a difference. Jerry, okay, sidebar, y'all. What candle is that? It smells like vanilla.
Somebody bought it for me. It's mistletoe birch.
Oh,
Catherine. Somebody.
It smells so good. It's that time of year, y'all, to be into candles. If you're not following Sir Candleman on Instagram, he is quite interesting. Sir Candleman, he is funny, right? He's funny. But he's got some great recommendations for candles, and has got his own candle, right? He and another candle maker connected and partnered on a candle that's now in Nordstrom for him. So congratulations to Sir Candleman.
Let me say this. You said something about when you go back and you look back over all the old shows and where you first started from and stuff. I was giving a birthday shout out to one of my people that is in my play, been on my play for 25 years. And I noticed when I was posting the tribute to her, I was looking at all the work that I had did. And I'm like, why did I do that? I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. And then it came to me, if you could do that in that season when you had less than what you have now, imagine what you can do in this season. Absolutely. So looking back also is a way that you were bold enough to get started. Yes. And if you could still sustain it when you knew very little, had very little knowledge of what you were doing. Yes. Imagine how much greater it can be now that you have learned more, now that you've connected with more people. And I'm always looking at that. What happens now that we know more? Because the much is given, much is required. Absolutely. So if you still have it, it's a reason you still have it. Absolutely. And I don't take that lightly, because, that's one of the reasons I go to these podcast festivals. And I just interviewed someone. I can't wait for you guys to hear her interview. Her name is Anna Deshawn. Shout out to Anna of The Cube. I interviewed her. You'll see her interview next year on the podcast. I met her I saw her for the first time at Black Podfest in Atlanta. And then I met her in person at Afros and Audio. She was one of the speakers. And she started The Cube and has an app, and it is an incredible space for BIPOC and LGBTQIA creators. Because if you look at, as she was saying, if you look at the statistics, so this is about knowing your craft and knowing your space. If you look at the statistics around podcasts, let's just say there are like 4 million, I think it's 4 million going on 5 million podcasts out there. There's that many out there. And all the reports that come out, like Nielsen, there's one from Sirius. BIPOC folks are 40-50% of listeners, in some cases up to 70, depending on the genre. 4% of creators, 4% of the space is there
for us. And so she is one of those people that is taking that opportunity. Has always been in media and is taking that opportunity to create a space for new radio dramas. You'll hear about it, to create a space for content creators with really great podcasts. She's creating a podcast network. She's curated a bunch of stuff, and she's creating a space for some podcasts that are probably going to be pretty controversial, that are, and I say controversial because societally controversial, in that LGBTQIA area, in that polyamory area, and all these kind of things. And what I told her was, what I love about what she's doing is, one, she is showing up as her, and she has really gotten to the place where she's like, look, if there's an issue that you have with me, that's about you and not about me, because I got to stay true to who I am. But the other thing she has done is really create, y'all know how I feel about being curious. She has created a safe space for people to be curious about things that maybe they don't know anything about, or maybe they've been told are heinous or wrong or whatever, to just ask questions. It may by no means change an opinion or a perspective, but it can at least broaden a perspective if you create safe spaces for people to be curious. And that's what I loved about Anna, because that's what I'm all about. It's all about curiosity, and it's about creating safe spaces. One of the things I tell people that work with me is, you have a safe space with me. It is no judgment. I'll hold you accountable for what you say you want and what you say you want to do, but it's a space of no judgment, because how can I judge you? I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve. And so in service, that means I can't be sitting in judgment. I have to be sitting in service. That's what that means, right? So I really want to encourage you guys to enable yourselves to chop off the damage, grow it out as long as you can. But when it's time, just do the big chop it off. Allow that place of strength to come through, knowing it may look a little ugly for a while, like my little nubby fingernails right now. It may look a little ugly for a while, but if you stick with it and you nurture it, and you oil up those cuticles, right? And you buff those nails, and you make sure that you're doing what you can to take care of that really strong foundation, that strong base that you've built, when you've pruned off all the dead stuff that is sucking the life out of it, you will be so much further ahead and so much better if you allow yourself to do that. Don't get so stuck in aesthetics or what other people say you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to be, that you allow the damage to continue, because that damage will continue to split up. That's what they say about split ends. That's why you trim your hair. Split ends don't get better when you leave them alone. They continue to damage the hair. They just keep growing up the hair shaft, right? Next thing you know, instead of chopping off 1/4 of an inch, you're having to chop off 2 inches because you left it alone. You didn't deal with it when it was the least impactful. But it takes courage to do that. And it's easy to talk about the aesthetic stuff, right? Because we can all relate to that. We can all relate to the aesthetic stuff, because that's the society we live in. We are visual people. It's one of the things about language, right? That he said, once it's written down, that's when it becomes real. That's when it became a problem. It's because once it's written down, it's like locked. And then all of a sudden we've got right and wrong in how we speak. So I want you to think about who you're listening to, and then think about what damage you're allowing to just kind of seep into your foundation, so that you can do something different. And then I want you to reach out to me and tell me what you're planning for 2023. How are you prepping to get ready for that? How are you moving through so that that damage doesn't keep showing up for you in 2023? Because when we get complacent, it shows up, man, out of nowhere. It'll just creep on right back up. How are you standing in that power? How are you standing in that promise and moving through that so that it's making an impact that you want to make, so that you're serving the way you want to serve? Because we all have a purpose. We all have a purpose, and we all have something that's bigger than us that we're trying to do and that we should be doing, because life is short. Life is short, and we need that dash to mean something. No matter how short the dash is, it should be meaningful. It should be meaningful. And I know for me, when she said that, there have been so many things. That's what happens for me. There's so many things that start showing up. And if I'm paying attention, they all compile to make the same picture, right? This whole movement back to what I said 5 years ago has been a slow burn. This year of 2022 has been almost like a rebirth of my initial movement, of my initial thoughts, of my initial heart's desire in that dash, my initial knowing that I allowed others to modify. I won't even say change, modify, because it's always been there. It was just modified to be back burner or to look different or to show up different, because just like everybody else, you get caught up in the folks that are really successful doing something all the same way. And you think, well, that's the way it has to be done. It doesn't have to be done that way. That's why Apple is what it is, because they saw something different than IBM and Microsoft. They weren't the PCs of the world. They saw something different. They focused on something different, right? That's why we have so many people who have done great things, because they saw something different. Their perspective was different. So don't allow your perspective to get clouded just because it's different. That may mean you have to work harder. That may mean you have to find a different niche or get really clear on your message so people get it. But it doesn't mean it's wrong just because nobody else is doing it. I heard a podcast, or was it a podcast? I heard something the other day, and someone was talking about, I need to put them on my podcast. It's someone who opened up, it's called, it's a sports bar, but the name of the sports bar is called the Sports Bra. They just flip the words, and it focuses on, and only thing they show in this venue is women's sports. That's it. They don't show men's sports. They only show women's sports. And so in the interview, the person was on Marketplace. And when Kai Rizdal asked her about that, what she thought, and she said, when I talked to my dad was like, maybe nobody's done it because it wouldn't work, right? Because the question is, well, has anybody done that before? Why hadn't anybody done that before? Surely there's nothing new under the sun. If it hadn't been done before, that means it couldn't be done. Or if it hadn't been done before, that means it wouldn't work. That's not always the case. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it can't be done now. And doesn't mean that you don't maybe have the secret sauce because it's your real vision to make it happen. It hadn't been done before because nobody else had the same impetus that this woman had to make it happen. And, her first investors were like, oh, it's a hard no. It's a hard no. That's not going to happen. And she opened it up during the pandemic, and it's doing great. She's actually talking about franchising now because it really hit a niche. It hit a safe space, right, for folks to show up. And women's sports are doing great. No shade to the women, to the men's national soccer team, but the women keep going to the World Cup and winning. I'm just saying. At least they're now getting equitable pay. At least that's the last I heard. So, there are lots of opportunities still there for you to fill your dash with the thing that makes your heart sing. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done.
We live in a world of trends, with social media, that this dance and that dance and this TikTok and that TikTok and this, that, and the third. Mm-hmm. But when you said that, I'm thinking about that because earlier I said today that, somebody can make a flyer and they can take clip art and put it where they need to put it. But the graphic artist knows how to make the template. And when you know how to make the template, other people follow your template. Mm-hmm. So who's going to be bold enough to step out and be the template instead of being following a template, right? Because I believe that God has given us all creativity to be a template and to have the niche in our area. There are millions of people talking on radio and on podcasts. Yes. Well, what is going to make you different? What is going to make us different? And I have these conversations with my head advisor, which is God, all the time. I said, okay, I don't want to do the same thing that everybody is doing. Right. And that's not arrogancy. That is knowing that you have the ability. If you listen to wise counsel, and I have a whole bunch of counsel because sometimes you have too many voices, and follow that lead. I like what you said earlier. Who are you listening to? Because who you listen to the most is what you follow the most. Yes. So whoever you listen to, you better hope that they know what you're talking about. Right.
And how can you get your mindset so that if you are going to continue to engage in social media, I just saw somebody else the other day that said they cut off all their social media. And just decided it was just too much for them. If you're going to engage in social media and listen to social media, I mean, I do, there's some reach that's there. How do you put it in the right perspective so that it simply remains a tool, not your source of your entire perspective or your source of self-worth or your source of capability, that you don't allow it to tell you your worth or what you should be doing, right? All those algorithms, all that kind of stuff. Look, guys, you can build a multi-billion dollar business with 2 followers because the followers don't matter, right? You know what I mean? It's not about the followers. It's about engagement. It's about context. It's about impact. Not everyone that's watching you is saying anything. Not everyone that's watching you is actively following you. And I think people are finally realizing that, right? So all this advertisement of, we only want to advertise with people that have 100 million followers or all this kind of madness, right? Yeah, you may have 100 million followers. If it's too early in the game, then you probably bought most of those. But even if those are organic, that's 100 million, but how engaged are they? How influenced are they by you? Or did they just come across and they liked it and so they just followed just because?
Well, you know, if you're doing it for money, there's a difference now. Because the followers add up to money and views
sometimes,
add up to money.
Yes. Yeah.
And it does add up. And it's like a business. It's like you have to put the work in.
Right.
And it may take a month, 2 months, it may take 2 years to develop what you need in order to, you know, put out there what you want to put out there, because everybody has a reason for why they do what they have to do. And so I'm just, you know, I like how you're saying that. Who are you listening to? And what's best for your business?
Exactly.
What's best for your brand? What's best for whatever the purpose is?
Right.
I love using social media to put the word out there.
Yes.
I put scripture out there. I put stories out there and comedic things. And it works for me. Whatever works for you works for you.
Exactly.
But I believe that God has given us a tool to work.
Absolutely. A tool.
Yes.
To work.
A tool.
It's a tool. And that's, and you touched right on it, Jerry, when I say, you know, really, how are you moving through that damage? Because social media has done so much damage to so many people. And if it's really damaging you, you need to cut it off. You'll be fine without social media. You'll be all right. There is such a thing as just going to the plain old internet and pulling up an article from New York Times or your local TV station or whatever. You won't be without the news if you cut off social media. There are ways to get to information without being on the gram, right? Or TikTok or any of that other stuff. If it makes you nuts, if it really makes your spirit heavy, stop. You got a choice. There are other ways to be in the know. And as Jerry said just a minute ago, and I've told you guys all the time, you got to know why you're doing something. What is your strategy? What is the reason? If your goal is to be an influencer, if your goal is to have product placement, if your goal, then yes, you need to have a reach that people can see. Oh, she has 100 million visitors. You know, 100 million followers. We know from all the statistics that we get maybe 5% of followers actually buy something. Well, that 5% is a much bigger number if I'm going after somebody with 100 million than if I'm going after somebody with 500, right? Maybe. Because if that 100 million has maybe a 1% engagement, but that 500 has a 80% engagement, are you really getting more out of the 100 million? Know why you're doing what you're doing. Know what your purpose is for doing it, and know what work needs to be done to make it happen, right? Why are you doing media stuff? As Jerry said, I do this, one, because I love it, but also because it's a way to reach people. It's a way to connect, right? It is not for me in this moment. It is not the driving revenue thing for me, right? It is something that resources in. It is an investment of my time and my energy and my dollars. It is an investment to do 3 shows. And I do it because I get a chance to connect with folks. I get a chance to make connections that drive the other revenue pieces of the business, right? I get a chance to be out there as a thought leader. That's why I do that, right? Now, might that change in 2023 and I focus more on, you know, YouTube to build some visibility on some things? Probably, right? Do some more guesting myself because I love having guests on. I probably need to focus a little bit more on getting on myself because I haven't done that. That tends to be me, right? I'm focused on other folks and not focusing on me. So I'll be doing more of that in 2023. But I know why. I know why. And when you know why, then you can decide the what. And the how will take care of itself. But you gotta know why first.
You partner with, because you got Jenny, right?
Yes.
And she's your help.
Yeah.
And I had dinner with Attorney Hall. We talked about this very thing. Your perspective on something may have changed.
Yes.
And so you got to know that those that are flowing with you, what their perspective, and can we make this work?
Yes.
Because I'm not a person that is just content with just, okay, good, we're all over the world now, we can be heard.
Yes.
What else?
What else?
Do
yes.
We got all this building, got all this space. what else are we going to do? So we had to get on the same page and make sure that we understood one another, what I'm to do, what he's to do. And that's the same way when you partner with people.
Absolutely.
Maybe something has changed. So you have to check in every now and then and find out if something has changed, if you want to see anything change for real.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we just had that year-end conversation where I'm like, y'all, finally, 5 years in, it has come full circle. And here's the word. Navigator, alignment, vision, action. All the stuff I've been talking about, here are the things we're going to write. Every piece of copy is around these things, right? The postings are around these things. The emails are around these things. It's always been clear, but it got solid in 2022. Right. And so you're right. Just having that conversation and say, hey guys, here's what it is. Right. And knowing that they're aligned and knowing that they see it. Knowing that they see it too, and having people around you that you trust, and knowing that team doesn't necessarily mean employees. Team can mean other service providers who are in your circle. They are still your team. They're still your team. It just doesn't mean, it means you're just not having to do W-2s, right? And if you're going to have a team, that means you have to have a conversation about your perspective, about your desires, about your vision, right? Because everything, whether you're building a business or you're building a career, it all comes down to strategy and people. And in order to have good strategy and people, you got to be clear on your who you are, where you are, what you want, and what it's going to take to get there. Pretty simple.
We got Miss Doretha Harris. She's here from, you know where you from, girl. She said, good talk. Thanks from Minnesota. Getting older. Minnesota. Hey, good to have you.
Minnesota. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Hickman is on here. Michelle Johnson is on
here. Good morning.
Terrence Hall is on here. Got a few more people I can't see right now. So
I love it. I love it. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. And yes, I encourage you as we go into this last few weeks to really get resettled. Get ready to just jump off into 2023. It is not the end, y'all. We've got a lot of more time in 2022. So to do some things and get ready for 2023. Set yourself up for success. That was the time to do that. So thank y'all for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it. Love having this Tuesday. Keep an eye on my speaking of social media, because we're going to make some changes. The schedule will be different for next week. So thank y'all. Love ya. See you next week. Bye.